The rules are supposed to be simple. Police keep order, crews move quiet, money flows. But Montreal flipped the script. Two patches faced off for the city's soul. Red and white on one side, Rock Machine on the other. Ultimatums, street tax, puppet clubs, and barred doors turning into battle lines. Deals cut in smoke rooms, bombs and bullets in daylight, cops scrambling, courts wobbling, crowds cheering the wrong kings. This isn't just crime, it's power, loyalty, fear. Brothers turning on brothers. A war that rewired a province and crowned a new king of the streets. Join us as we track the rise, the hits, and the betrayal behind Canada's deadliest biker war. It all started in 1986. Two Montreal brothers, Salvatore and Giovanni Cazzetta, refused to ride under another man's colors. That's when they built their own crew, the Rock Machine Motorcycle Club. They called it brotherhood. They wanted turf, money, and respect in Quebec, and they were ready to stare down the Hells Angels to get it. The streets were already crowded. The Hells Angels, born in California in 1948, had grown into the biggest outlaw biker club on earth. Roughly 6,000 members, hundreds of charters, dozens of countries, red and white colors, a reputation that made cops sweat. On the 5th of December 1977, they planted their flag in Canada when the Popeyes of Montreal patched over at a party in Laval. From there, they spread fast. They weren't the only heavy patch. The outlaws were pushing from Ontario. From 1977 to 1982, Angels and Outlaws went head-to-head in the first biker war. It was savage. The Angels won. The Outlaws fell back. Quebec belonged to the red and white. They had streets, ports, and muscle. Montreal was theirs, for the moment. Power cost blood. In 1985, the Angels showed how cold it gets. 5 men from their Laval chapter were branded reckless. A meeting in Lennoxville became an ambush. 5 dead, bodies dumped in the St. Lawrence River. The Lennoxville massacre shocked Quebec and proved the Angels would kill their own to keep order. It also cracked the club. Some leaders ran. For a minute, the Angels looked shaky. Salvatore Cazzetta saw Lennoxville and said no. He wanted nothing to do with the patch that butchered brothers. He broke off and built the Rock Machine. He had weight and Mafia ties. That cover mattered. With his crew, he controlled chunks of Montreal outside Italian hands. As long as Salvatore sat in the chair, the Angels held back. The Rock Machine grew under that shield. The Hells were not done. Enter Maurice Mom Botcher. He and Cazzetta had once ridden together in the SS, a white supremacist crew, in Pointe-aux-Tremblay. After a prison stretch for sexually assaulting a 16-year-old, Botcher came out hungry. In 1986, he joined the Quebec Hells. By the 1st of May 1987, he was full patch and running the Sorel chapter, ruthless, climbing, and wired through a disgraced ex-cop, Guy Lepage. The old friends were now rivals across the street. By the late 80s, Quebec felt like a pressure cooker, the red zone. Rock Machine held ground with Mafia cover. Under Botcher, the Hells clawed back. A spark was coming. On the 26th of March 1992, the Angels played a smart card. The Rockers, a puppet club. Wannabes did the dirty work to earn prospect stripes. Many washed out. The ones who stayed were hungry and dangerous. With the Rockers behind them, the Angels had manpower and layers of cover. This wasn't just wild boys on bikes. It was a business. Fear was a tool. You can't underestimate the power of the patch, one investigator said. By the early 90s, the Angels had a tight grip, but the Rock Machine was still there, still strong. 2 biker armies in one city. Montreal was about to burn. Summer 1994 turned hot fast. The Hells Angels moved to squeeze the streets, pushing a hard rule across Montreal. Anyone dealing dope in the city had to buy from them. No exceptions. Maurice Mom Botcher wanted the plug, the pipeline, and the profit. He didn't just send a message, he sent muscle. Puppet crews like the Rockers and the Death Riders rolled up on Rock Machine turf, leaning on bar owners and street dealers to switch supply. It was a takeover play, plain and simple, but the Rock Machine wasn't built to fold. They saw the move, clocked the pressure, and started loading up for a counter. Boucher's tactic was clever and cold. Use feeder clubs to do the dirty work and test loyalty. The Rockers and Death Riders hit bars, whispered ultimatums, and tried to flip dealers without dragging full-patch Angels into the light. The Rock Machine answered in the same language. They stood up their own puppet crew, the Palmers MC, to fire back. The Palmers opened chapters in Montreal and Quebec City, with Jean Lefrançais Ducaire and André Dédé Desormeaux calling shots on the street. Desormeaux had dark circle ties, then slid deeper into Rock Machine ranks. The board was set, puppet against puppet, soldier against soldier, and the money spots in both cities turned into pressure cookers. The war clock started for real on the 13th of July 1994. 3 Rock Machine associates walked into a custom bike shop in Rivière des Prairies and turned Death Riders member Pierre Daoust into the first confirmed casualty. He caught lead at work, a shot meant to echo through every puppet club working for the Angels. It did. The message was clear. The Rock Machine and their allies were not buying any ultimatum. They were buying time, bullets, and loyalty. And within 24 hours, the streets answered back with heat. The day after Daoust dropped, Rockers member Norm Robitaille got caught in a shooting in Montreal and lived to tell it. Same day, the Sûreté du Québec grabbed 5 Rock Machine members, rolling with guns, explosives, and detonators on their way to hit the South Shore clubhouse of the Evil Ones, another Hell's puppet. That stop didn't just save a building. It showed both sides the police were tuned in. Bombs on the highway, guns in the trunk. Montreal was now a pressure map where every move drew eyes and every mistake drew cuffs. 3 days, 3 sparks, and Boucher pulled the big lever. He called senior Angels from across Quebec to a hotel in Longueuil. It was the meeting that either turns heat into war or war into silence. According to Hell's Angel turned Crown witness Sylvain Boulanger, the Montreal Trois-Rivières and Quebec City chapters were all in. Michel Sky Langlois, Boucher himself, and Quebec City's Vice President Marc-Tom Pelletier were pushing hard to greenlight retaliation. Only Sherbrooke tried to pump the brakes. The vote was the trigger. Boucher now had the army he wanted. The Angels weren't just answering hits. They were going to war with the Alliance. Ultimatums and votes are one thing. Turf gets decided at pavement level. On the 19th of October 1994, local dealer Maurice Lavoie was shot in his car, his girlfriend wounded beside him. He used to buy from the Pelletier clan, a faction tied to the Rock Machine. He switched to Hell's Supply. That switch cost him. The Pelletier clan hired a hitter named Patrick Call to make sure nobody missed the point. In this war, crossing a line wasn't business. It was a funeral plan, and the clan wasn't finished marking territory. 9 days after Lavoie got hit, the Hells Angels took their shot. They killed Sylvain Pelletier, the leader of the Pelletier clan. That punch ripped through Montreal's independent scene. If you thought the Angels only leaned on puppets and prospects, Sylvain's death proved they could reach in and take a head when it suited them, but it also kicked off the next phase. The independents would not stand alone. They would stand together, and Montreal hardened fast. Independent dealers and small crews who refused to pay tax lined up with the Rock Machine, first as a loose front and then after Sylvain fell, as the alliance to fight the Angels with his brother Harold Pelletier as the face. The Pelletier clan and Rock Machine bringing the muscle, while the Dark Circle brought the cash and cover. Not bikers, but suits and owners, bar and restaurant bosses, moving product and washing money like ghosts in nice clothes, hiding behind counters and ledgers, their 5-man committee calling shots from the shadows with Michel Duclos as chair. Together, that mix of firepower and financing gave the anti-Angel side a spine built to take a punch and swing right back. Now the alliance aimed at the head. In November 1994, Harold Pelletier tried to take out Boucher. Martin Simard from the Pelletier clan got his hands on stolen dynamite. Alliance member Martin parked a truck packed with explosives near Boucher's favorite restaurant. The plan was simple and vicious. Wait for Boucher to pull up, hit a remote, and turn the spot into a crater. But a Montreal parking officer saw a truck sitting wrong and had it towed. No idea what he was stopping. No clue who he had just saved. The bomb never went off. The boss kept breathing, and the war stayed on a knife edge. On the 4th of November 1994, Rock Machine's Daniel Bertrand got dropped in a Montreal bar. Clean message. No one was safe, not even at a drink. The Angels weren't just guarding turf. They were hunting. A month later, the 4th of December 1994, the chaos bit back. Rock Machine member Bruno Bandiera died when his car bomb cooked off early. Bad luck or bad wiring didn't matter. From then on, every bomb run felt like a coin flip, every turn like it could be your last. That is a bomb war. Fear pushed into the city, and sometimes that fear circles home. While bodies fell, another fuse lit. That same month, Rockers member Danny Kane, a protege of David Wolf Carroll, reached out to Interpol in Ottawa. He wanted to sell intel. Kane wasn't a nobody. Carroll had built the Angels in Halifax in 1984, then moved to Montreal in 1990 to back Boucher. Kane had tried to launch a Toronto puppet club, the Demon Keepers, at the request of Carroll. National boss Volodymyr, Walter the Nerge Stanek, and Donald Pup Stockford. It flopped hard. Cops boxed the crew before a single sale. Kane ate that loss and wanted payback, so he flipped. Interpol linked him to RCMP Staff Sergeant Jean-Pierre Levesque and handler Corporal Pierre Verdon. Their first sit-down hit on the 4th of November 1994. Kane came heavy. He named Boucher as Quebec's alpha, feared by his own patch, moving to crush all rivals. He said American Angel Scott Steinert was on a dynamite spree. He said Boucher and Steinert raged when they learned about the dynamite-packed truck left near Boucher's favorite restaurant. Now the cops had whispers from inside the puppet world. Some of Kane's tips were self-serving. even pinning a 1995 murder on another Angel. But most of it held up and became a key window into the Angel side. Kane was also living a double life, secretly with fellow rocker Amy Simard. Double lives inside a double war. Kane sketched the top table too. Carol backbotcher despite weak French. He, Stadnik, and Stockford were the Anglos inside Quebec leadership. Wiretaps later showed they needed interpreters at meetings. In French Quebec, that gap mattered. Carol learned some French during 2 years in a Quebec prison, awaiting charges tied to Lennoxville, but he was still an outsider voice in a room that bled in French. Even so, the Anglos held national power and backbotchers push. The mix worked because fear and money translate. Back on the street, the Dark Circle tightened its system. Chair Michel Duclos was no biker. He taught school by day and ran a bar that washed drug profits by night. That camouflage kept raids off balance. Bars could shutter, swap staff, and slide cash before detectives cleared the curb. The Rock Machine and the Pelletier crew handled muscle. The Palmers became RM's street knife, guarding RM bars, escorting trusted dealers, and shadowing Hell's spots for weak links. With Jean Lefrançais Ducaire and André Dédé Desormeaux up front, the Palmers did the dirty grind that wins corners. If a rocker squad rolled up, a Palmer squad rolled closer. If the Death Riders recruited, the Palmers pressed the same faces to hold the line. Move and counter-move. Small wins, stacking into survival. Inside the Angels, the last holdout folded. Sherbrooke, the only chapter against retaliation, relented by August. That gave Botcher what he wanted, a unanimous war vote. With that stamp, transport routes, safe houses, stash spots, and target lists could flow cleaner. Unanimity does not mean peace, it means speed. Orders move faster, and hesitation hurts more. The Alliance now faced a unified machine. Independents felt the squeeze. Some tried crawling back to Angel Supply, but Lavoie's murder made that look suicidal. Others pushed deeper with the Alliance, trusting Dark Circle money and Rock Machine muscle. Montreal turned into a gambler's table. You either got rich or got buried. By year's end, both sides had traded shots and crossed lines that could not be uncrossed. The fuse was still burning. The next year would show how fast the fire would run. New Year's Day, 1995, the Angels sent a cold cross-border signal. Rock Machine's Norman Baker was drinking at a Hard Rock Cafe in Acapulco when Hell's Angel Francois Hintz stepped up and killed him. Baker had helped take out Pierre Daoust in 1994. This hit said it plain. Cross the Angels and you are not safe anywhere. Mexican police arrested Hintze, but a judge took a fat bribe and the charge vanished. Pressure kept climbing. The Angels leaned on a hitter who already had a name. Serge Canel, tied to the Trois Rivières chapter, had built a rep in 1993 by killing dealer Richard Jobin. Then another independent Martinot, with scissors to the eye and a throat cut. In November 1994, chapter boss Louis Malou Roy brought Quesnel in. The deal was blunt, $500 a week plus $10,000 per body. Quesnel said yes. On the 30th of January 1995, Quesnel hit Quebec City and murdered Jacques Ferland, a Rock Machine chemist. That kind of loss hurts twice. You lose a man and a skill. Supply, money, and morale all take a bite. The pace did not slow. On the 27th of February, Rock Machine's Claude Cossette was shot dead in his van. The same run of days, Pelletier clan dealer Claude Rivard caught bullets at a red light. After Rivard's hit, Quesnel and Richard Vallee were chased by Montreal police, dumped the car, and escaped on foot. The lesson was loud. Wear the wrong patch or feed the wrong crew, and even a stoplight can be a setup. On the 23rd of March 1995, Quesnel played it cold. He lured independent associate Richard Belcourt into a drive toward Quebec City, pulled onto a quiet rural strip, stopped, and shot him in the head. No crowd, no scramble, just a body on a lonely road. That style spooked everyone. If a handshake could turn into a hit, who could you even trust to share a car? The run ended fast. On the 1st of April 1995, police arrested Quesnel. The killer didn't want to die in a cage. He turned Crown witness, taking a deal to be parole eligible after 12 years and pocketing about $390,000. Roy got charged with murder, but a jury would clear him in 2 years. Street takeaway: even when a shooter flips, not every boss falls. And now the Crown had a voice from inside a chapter, while the Angels had to wonder who else might start talking. On the 24th of June 1995, Botcher leveled up the whole game. He created the Nomads, an elite Angels chapter with no city boundary, free to move across Canada. Entry wasn't just about loyalty. Applicants had to commit murders. That rule locked out undercover cops and guaranteed only hard, proven hitters got in. The Nomads started to outshine the Montreal chapter that had been the original Canadian base since 1977. Some Montreal Angels resented it, but nobody tried Botcher. He had the crown and the muscle to keep it. The war now had a roaming strike team with a green light. On the 9th of August 1995, a bomb took the war to a place the city could not ignore. Drug dealer Marc Dubé died when his Jeep blew near the Hells Angels clubhouse in Hochelaga Maisonneuve. Across the street, 11-year-old Daniel Desrochers was playing outside. Debris from the blast hit him. He died in the hospital 5 days later. The streets asked one question: who planted that bomb? Angels or Rock Machine? Danny Kane, the Rockers insider, whispering to the RCMP's Corporal Verdon, said American Angel Scott Steinert started acting strange after the boy died. Nervous, worried about prison or deportation. Kane figured Steinert had ordered or planted the bomb and now feared the fallout. Since that day, Steinert no longer talked about the bombs he had ordered and never spoke again about using bombs, Kane reported. He said Steinert even asked his crew what they thought of the bombing, and when some said the murderer should be liquidated, Steinert went quiet and pensive. No guilt for the child, just fear of the heat. Kane also said Botcher and Steinert had talked about a sick plan, kill one of their own in a brutal way to swing public opinion against the Rock Machine. Doob, a low-level angel, was picked to be sacrificed. An RCMP report called Steinert a very violent and cruel psychopath who can't control himself and marked him as the prime suspect. The report said whoever pushed the button could see kids across the street, and that matched Steinert's profile and Kane's info. Commander Andre Bouchard of Montreal Police said, "I'm convinced today that the person who pressed the button to have the bomb explode saw children across the street. There was no way he could not see the children across the street." On the other side, Rock Machine Montreal boss Renaud Jean told journalist Michel Auger, "We don't attack or target, and we certainly don't kill children." And he called the Hells Angels a bunch of goons on a power trip. The outrage was instant. The war wasn't just gang business anymore. It was the city's grief. The retaliation wheel kept turning. On the 15th of September 1995, Richard Crow Emond got gunned down in a parking lot while helping his girlfriend out of a car. He had just replaced Roy as president of the Trois-Rivières chapter. Emond became the first fully patched Hells Angel killed by the Rock Machine. That title made the hit heavy. It wasn't a puppet. It wasn't a prospect. It was a boss. The Angels felt that one in their bones. 6 days after Emond's funeral, on the 21st of September, 3 Rock Machine members, Benoit Grignon, Daniel Paul, and Pierre Patry, tried to plant a bomb outside the St. Luc clubhouse of the Jokers, an Angels puppet outfit that Emond had overseen when he was alive. A Jokers member fired a shotgun. The shot triggered the explosive. The bomb blew the trio apart. Same day, 2 more blasts hit, one at a strip club in Laval and one at a used car lot in Montreal Est. No bodies in those, but cars and nerves got wrecked. That week felt like the war pressed fast forward. Montreal was living inside a blast radius. You see, Desrochers' death flipped the city fast. People turned on everyone. Cops, politicians, courts, saying nobody moved until a kid died. On the 5th of October 1995, Ottawa, Quebec, and Montreal rolled out Operation Carcajou, a joint squad of RCMP, Sûreté du Québec, and Montreal police meant to end the war and find the bomb men. Commander Andre Bouchard jumped in hard, full uniform, full presence, raiding bars and biker businesses to show no patch scared him. At first, the unit looked strong. Money, gear, bodies, but Bouchard didn't like what he saw from the SQ side. He called their ethics crooked, told a story about a Quebec City party with $50 wine and nobody paying, asking, "Is this a protected bar?" His rule was simple. You don't protect the place where you're supposed to make arrests. He blasted SQ expense habits too. Ritz-Carlton, steak, wine, and refused to sign $800 interrogation bills. You interrogate a piece of shit in a motel, you don't bring him to the fucking Ritz. By 1996, he walked out saying SQ detectives ran secret jobs, dropping 7 guys in cells with no briefing. Politics poisoned the rest. Quebec's separatist government and Ottawa's liberals blamed each other. Quebec wanted a RICO-style law. Ottawa said, use the laws you have. RCMP Sergeant Gaëtan Saint-Onge called Carcajou a total circus, saying the SQ envied the RCMP source, Kane, and pushed to learn his name, even claiming SQ leaked their own sources and treated them like dirt. Turf fights inside a task force meant fewer wins outside. Even funerals turned petty. Carcajou added security for Hells Angel Robert Tiny Richards' send-off on the 29th of February 1996, and provincial brass snapped that locals could handle it, while Quebec City's mayor wanted Carcajou running anti-biker to save cash. Leaders argued. Bombs and bullets kept talking. The weeks after the boy's death went feral. Montreal became a map of fresh scenes. Public rage slammed the badge. One senior cop even tried to blame drug demand. That didn't land. People wanted the killing to stop. January 1996 opened with Hell's associate Glenn Cormier murdered in Quebec City. In March 1996, Kane himself shot dealer Roland Lebrasseur for refusing Hell's product. On paper, Kane was an informant. In the street, he was still a hitter, living close to bosses and the edge. Earlier, he'd whispered something ugly to his handlers. Botcher bragged he always knew what cops knew, and someone high in Montreal police fed him. Kane said the Angels paid double a cop's weekly wage for intel and warned the RCMP not to share with the city police or he'd get burned. That fear felt real because the rot was real. Senior Detective Benoit Roberge, the same guy tasked to choke out the Guerre des Motards, built a business lane with Hell's leader, René Charlebois, and sold information. That's how cases die. Witnesses vanish, sources dry up, shooters grin. Fallout from the kid's death powered new laws, Bill C-95 in 1997 and Bill C-24 in 2001. Tougher penalties for organized crime, but in 1995 that was future talk. On the ground, the war kept eating lives while Quebec's crown attorneys went to a gunfight with no ammo. Montreal had 84 prosecutors and only 4 secretaries. They typed their own work and lost prep time. No computers until 2002, no online databases, an old library so stale, Crowns asked defense for current jurisprudence. Lowest pay in Canada, half of Ontario. No family security. 1 crown per outlaw biker file instead of teams of 4 to 6. Heavy files, rich defense, burnout waiting. Veteran prosecutor René Domingue, fresh off Lennoxville, became Carcajou's legal brain in 1995 and saw the math. The squad got $5 million. The Crown got nothing. I was alone on a part-time basis. I was running around like mad and unable to do any decent work. Membership alone wasn't a crime in Canada. The Crown had to prove acts, not patches. Ottawa wouldn't do a Canadian RICO. When the Desrochers heat cooled, Scott Steinert kept climbing. In March 1996, he took the Filthy Few killer patch and a full patch too. He ran the Sensations escort service, the biggest in Montreal, until 2 months later, the Rock Machine would burn it down. Mid-1996, Marcel Demers opened a second Rock Machine chapter in Beauport and moved up, lifting Frederick Fokker to run Quebec City. The sex work money sparked beefs. Carroll's adventure escort service sagged while Steinert grabbed more. Steinert formed a groupe de cinq to bully bars and clubs on Crescent Street, then push into York Street in Ottawa with eyes on Toronto, Kingston, and Winnipeg. He even talked with the New York Mafia family to send Quebec strippers to a Dominican resort. The Angels ran their own street surveillance with 3 hidden camera vehicles, filming faces and plates, even mourners at the funeral of Frank Cotroni's mother, because Botcher was thinking bigger. Finish the Rock Machine now, then liquidate the Cotroni family later. Back in October 1995, Harold Pelletier had already walked into the SQ, confessed he murdered dealer Michel Beaulieu on the 7th of August 1983 for falling behind on payments, asked for protection from the Angels, then unspooled 17 murders from 1983 to 1995. The Crown cut a life sentence deal in June 1996 with full parole after 10 years for his underworld map, a mine of information. A deal he would later violate by trying to buy a prison hit in 2002 and lose his promised 2006 release. His plea told a bigger truth. The alliance against the Angels was buckling, and men wanted shelter. By 1996, Kane had already told the RCMP that Steinert had lived in Montreal since his teens and never took Canadian citizenship, so Ottawa moved on a deportation case. Months earlier, in December 1995, he had bought the La Vigueur mansion on Ile aux Pruches. Then in summer 1996, he married there and even filmed the Babe Angel on the estate with 9 of his escorts. And when a leave by 14 November 1996 order landed, his lawyer kept him in Canada by arguing he had a Canadian wife and child. The party kept rolling. In May 1996, Steinert's bodyguard, Donald Bam Bam Magnuson, snapped at a party and killed David Boyko, boss of the Los Bravos out of Winnipeg, who were lining up to patch over to the Angels. That blundered Jam Prairie expansion. Carroll decided nobody could be that dumb, so he suspected Magnuson was a cop plant. Steinert, for all his heat, did not get tapped for the Nomads, and in October 1996 started building his own crew inside the Montreal South chapter, a move that smelled like a challenge to Botcher. On the 18th of October 1996, Rock Machine Montreal president Renaud Jeanf sat with Christian Deschênes and others in a restaurant Kim Hoa on Wellington Street in Verdun. A man walked in, moved to their booth, pulled, fired, and ran out the back. Jeanf and Deschênes died. Raymond Leroux took a round in the shoulder. Peter Paradis stepped up to the presidency and took over Jeanf's Verdun business. The kill list also put heat on Marcel Demers, who now sat in the crosshairs. A month later, November 1996, Rock Machine bombed the old Angels bunker in St. Nicholas, and the neighborhood shook hard. Carroll told Kane to kill Magnuson, but Kane balked. Magnuson wore a full patch, and Kane was only a rocker. He had police warn Bam Bam he was a target. Magnuson laughed it off as a trick. That kind of pride gets men written on walls. December 1996 brought more blood. Hell's member Bruno van Lerberghe was shot 6 times while eating in a restaurant. By 1997, Carcajou changed tactics, smashed the Rock Machine, the weaker crew, and end the war by collapse. On the 29th of January 1997, 7 Rock Machine members were picked up for conspiracy linked to the failed 1994 truck bomb on Botcher. In February 1997, Magnuson beat up Leonardo Rizzuto, son of Vito Rizzuto. That swing reached far beyond biker politics. The Rizzuto family asked for Magnuson's head. When the Mafia puts in a request like that, bikers listen or they end up walking alone. 2 of the most shocking crimes of the biker war hit in 1997. Prison guard Diane Levine was shot by a man on a motorcycle as she walked home from a shift at Montreal's Bordeaux jail. Then Pierre Rondeau was murdered, and Robert Corriveau was wounded when their prison van got ambushed. Orders came from the top, Maurice Botcher. The shooter wanted into the Nomads, and murder was the entry fee. The rule was simple in that circle. You want the elite table? You lay a body down. On the 28th of March 1997, the streets saw how personal this war was getting. Rocker member Amy Simard waited outside a Montreal arena and put down Rock Machine member Jean-Marc Casey as Casey walked in to play hockey with friends. Simard said he was moving on orders from his president, Gregory Pissarro Woolley, a feared boss who ran the Rockers for the Angels and acted as Botcher's bodyguard. After the arrest, Simard cracked fast. He agreed to work with the RCMP because he was terrified his secret life would come out. He even burned his lover, Danny Kane, telling police Kane had stacked 3 bodies in the past 2 years. That confession iced Kane with the RCMP for a long stretch, and it put Woolley under a hard light as the Angels' go-to assassin. Simard laid out Woolley's empire in simple terms. Woolley built a street unit in St. Michel that started as the Crackdown Posse, then rebranded as the Syndicate in 1998. They wore blue like the U.S. Crips, shook down dépanneurs, and graduated to moving product and pulling triggers for the Angels. They became the crew you called for the dirty work when you did not want colors on the scene. Woolley ran the Rockers and kept tight ties with the Hell's leadership. The streets did not miss the contradiction, a black boss guarding a white supremacist leader, but the only color that mattered in this war was green. Even so, Simard crashed on the stand. Woolley walked on the murder case, and later in 1999, the Crown cut Simard loose from protection. That decision would come back to haunt him inside a prison yard. May 1997 brought pressure on the Rock Machine top table. Police flipped a member and ran a sting that pulled Giovanni Cazzetta into a 9-kilo cocaine sale after an ask for 15. The deal linked him to West End gang muscle and broke his parole. He went back inside and later took a 9-year sentence. Days later, National President Claude Vezina and his sergeant-at-arms, Danny Legros-Lagarde, got swept up in a Quebec sting after 7 drug transactions were logged over 5 months. Raids tied to Carcajou found a lab cooking PCP and meth, a mountain of dynamite with detonators, pistols, machine guns, carbines, and a suppressor. Cops also grabbed the Montreal clubhouse after finding dope on the property. With Vezina gone, Frédéric Fauché would later take the national chair on the 11th of September 1997, and Alain Red Tomato Burnett would take Quebec City. The Rock Machine kept standing, but every arrest shaved off time, talent, and trust. The Rock Machine looked at Scandinavia and saw Bandidos standing toe-to-toe with Angels. So in June 1997, leaders Faucher, Johnny Plescio, and Robert Tout Tout Ledger flew to Stockholm to court support. Swedish police were not having it and put them back on a plane. Faucher was gaining underworld attention after blowing the Angels' Quebec City clubhouse earlier in February 1997, but he knew the numbers game was brutal. He pushed to internationalize the fight by joining the Bandidos, the second biggest club on earth. He even invited Bandidos USA President George Wiegers to Quebec City for dinner on the 28th of October 1997. Cops walked into that fancy restaurant, said Wiegers was not welcome in Canada, and marched him straight to the airport. Inside the Rock Machine, the talk grew blunt. The Hells Angels were 10 times more powerful and organized than us. Others said they were more like just drug dealers, while the Angels were a big business. The hope became simple: patch over to the Bandidos or get crushed. Then in late 1997, it turned darker for the Angels themselves. Suspicions swirled around Scott Steinert and Donald Bam Bam Magnuson. Nomad David Wolf Carroll decided they had to be working for police, pointing to the failed push to deport Steinert and to a seized shipment of weed and ecstasy the pair had sent north. Kane, playing his own game, fed that suspicion by blaming them for leaks he had made. On the 4th of November 1997, Steinert and Magnuson left the Lavigueur mansion to meet Botcher and were never seen alive again. Their bodies later surfaced in the St. Lawrence River, hands tied behind backs, skulls beaten in with bats and hammers. It looked like an internal house cleaning, the kind that tells every patch holder what happens when trust runs out. That same year, a botched prison yard hit on Hell's Angel Denihul blew open a bigger secret. The investigation put a name to the shadows: the Dark Circle. The Angels started flashing cash for any list that named Dark Circle members. Over the next 2 years, 2 businessmen from that circle were murdered, and a third barely escaped. The message was brutal: if you bankrolled the Alliance, the Angels would reach past the street and into your driveway. By 1998, the Hells Angels were rolling like a corporation with teeth. The goal list was long: narcotics, stolen cars, prostitution, smuggling, illegal gambling, and extortion. They had reach into the driver's license office through insiders who would later sell home addresses of Rock Machine members for $200 a head. Those lists became hit menus. 4 men on those sheets ended up dead. The Angels were not just fighting in alleys. They were buying windows into private lives and turning paperwork into targets. The body count kept swinging the same way. On the 20th of February 1998, Denis Belleau of the Rock Machine was shot while eating in a Quebec City restaurant. On the 30th of July, Richard Bob Bomb Legacy took bullets as he left a Montreal gym. On the 23rd of August, a Rock Machine trio that included Foucher, Gerald Gallant, and Marcel Demers rode up and gunned down Paolo Cotroni in his driveway. Cotroni was tied to the Calabrian Cotroni family, rivals to the Sicilian Rizzutos, and he was friendly with Botcher. That hit tried to buy favor with the Rizzutos while robbing the Angels of a friend. On the 8th of September, a quiet night turned into a storm when Johnny Plesho's cable line got cut at his Laval home. He stood up to check it, and 27 rounds tore through the window. 16 hit him. At his funeral, a flower arrangement carried one word: Bandidos. It was a sign that the patch over was no longer a rumor. 1 month, 1 city, same message. The Angels were caving in the Rock Machine's middle. Then the Alliance's wallet cracked. Restaurateur and bar owner Salvatore Brunetti flipped to the Angels and delivered a list of Dark Circle names. On the 25th of September 1998, businessman Jean Rosa was found shot in front of his Pontiac Grand Prix, and neighbors learned their polite friend was washing drug money through his bar. On the 22nd of October, Pierre Bastien parked at home, opened a car door for his 8-year-old daughter, and got shot in the head at point-blank range. Panic set in. Other Dark Circle members ran to police and confessed crimes just to hide behind bars, saying prison was safer than freedom. One man was offered full parole for good behavior and refused, saying the Angels would kill him the moment he walked out. Another bar owner, Claude Joannette, followed Brunetti's path, cut a deal, and agreed to launder money for the Angels in exchange for his life. With the circle broken, the Alliance lost its cash shield, and when the money men fall, the street soldiers feel it on payday. On the 10th of November, Stéphane Morgan and his bodyguard, Daniel Boulet, were shot dead at Morgan's house. On the 27th of November 1998, Maurice Botcher beat the prison guard murder raps and rolled out like a star. In Hochelaga Maisonneuve, crowds cheered him and the Nomads like it was a royal parade. That night he hit a boxing card in Verdun. The arena stood up and fans lined for autographs. Polls and headlines turned him into a celebrity. The Crown and cops called it moral rot. On the street it read simple: the boss walked, the patch won, and respect shifted. The shine could not hide the stink. Montreal's force was already tagged as dirty. Bribes from both biker sides kept eyes closed, while straight cops got death threats and torched cars. An undercover said cases died because judges, prosecutors, and jurors were bribed. The Poitras Commission blasted Operation Carcajou in 1998 as ego wars and power grabs. RCMP and SQ detectives beefed with each other, not the bikers. Carcajou boss Michel Arcan got called out for contempt of the law and then got sacked. Inside felt like a police civil war, while bombs still popped outside. In April 1999, 5 big bombs were planted beside 5 police stations, including Commander Bouchard's shop. Faulty detonators saved the day. The Scorpions, a Hell's puppet, planted them, and a member later said the orders came from Botcher. It was a flex at the badge and a warning shot. That same summer, Rockers president Gregory Woolley got pulled for speeding. The constable pushed to see under his vest and offered to drop the ticket if he showed it. Woolley refused. 5 officers took him down. No drugs or guns were found on him, though a handgun suddenly lay on the pavement. His lawyers called it planted. A judge tossed the case as a clumsy setup. In jail on the way through, Woolley fought, got caught in a PCP smuggling try, and was isolated as too violent. He walked, but the uniform had marked him. By May 1999, the Rock Machine locked in as Bandidos hangarounds and started the path to probationary chapter on the 1st of December 2000. Their colors flipped from black and platinum to red and gold and stayed until the full patch at Kingston in December 2001. The Bandidos made all RM men start as probationary no matter their old rank. That bruised egos and pushed some to the Angels. On the 26th of August 1999, 2 rockers entered a St. Leonard car rental and asked for Serge. They wanted owner Serge Bruno, a dark circle man. Employee Serge Hervieux said, "Je suis Serge." 4.357 rounds later, he was dead. Wrong Serge. 2 kids left behind. The shooters botched the burn on the stolen Intrepid and left a trunk full of evidence. Still, both got bumped to full patch rockers. On the 1st of October 1999, Tony Plesho, Johnny's brother and Pointeau Tremblay's boss, was gunned down at a McDonald's with his family. That year also took Richard relative and Serge Boisvert. Boisvert walked the street waving an AK-47, and cops put him down when he refused to drop it. His brother said he knew he was going to die soon. Eventually, that is certain. Early 2000, Kane drove Nomad Norman Robitaille and soaked up talk. Robitaille said he, Botcher, and loan shark Robert Savard were building an internet company to force every pawn shop in Quebec to list goods for a fee. Refuse and your shop burns. Messengers were already sent. Meanwhile, Rizzuto capo Paolo Gervasi leaned the other way, helping the Rock Machine with dope and hosting them at his club. In April, his son Salvatore turned up dead in his Porsche outside Paolo's house. Paolo dodged one hit, but would later die in 2004. On the 17th of April 2000, Nomad Normand Hamel was ambushed in a Laval lot while taking his son to the doctor. He tried to run. The Rock Machine cut him down. Highest-ranking Hell's Angel to fall, Botcher, came to the scene. That night, on a tap, Nomad Norman Bellanger said the murder was part of the game we play, then called it pretty disgusting because the family saw it. 10 days later, Ali-Andre Dady Desjardins was shot in Sean's parking lot. Reporter Sharon Marsden wrote it marked a consolidation phase as the Hell's drug empire locked Quebec and the Maritimes and pushed west. Savard was dead by early July. On the 12th of May, the Angels tried to kill RM shooters Tony Duguay and Denis Boucher over Hamel. Glass blew. Duguay took rounds and later beat his case when a witness admitted Detective Benoit Roberge had fed him lies. On the 25th of June 2000, Trois-Rivières boss Louis Malou Roy vanished after a Nomads party. A witness later said he was taken to a meat plant and run through the machine alive. He never came back. On the 5th of August, Nomad René Charlebois held a wedding that showed how normal the Hells had become. Folk stars Jean-Pierre Ferland and Jeanette Reno performed and posed with Boucher for Allo Police, then claimed they did not know his history. Days later, Kane was found dead in his garage, ruled a suicide. On the 13th of September 2000, crime writer Michel Auger took 5 rounds in the back outside the Journal de Montreal and lived. 2 days later, 200 journalists marched. The heat dragged the Mafia in. Vito Rizzuto hosted a hush dinner on the 26th of September at Bleu Martin with Botcher and Frederick Faucher. 1 week later, on Thanksgiving, the bosses hugged for the cameras, then hit Super Sexy, while Nomad Norman Robitaille joked to cops that the budget would drop. It looked like peace. In this world, it was only a pause. The truce cracked fast. Faucher pushed a reverse takeover, fold Rock Machine into the Bandidos to internationalize the fight. Sweden and France backed it, US Bandidos didn't. Peace with the Angels died on the spot. Public faith in court was gone. A Montreal Crown attorney said bikers kill with impunity, blaming corruption. On the 10th of October 2000, an appeals judge blew up double jeopardy and ordered Botcher retried for the 1997 guard murders, calling the first trial bent by fear and bad instructions. Botcher swung back with a $30 million suit, wrote most of it himself, and got roasted for bad French. On the 1st of December 2000, Rock Machine became a probationary Bandidos chapter. Unlike the Angels, every man had to start as a prospect. Egos snapped, and some vets crossed to red and white. Soon after, Faucher was popped for importing cocaine, and Alain, Red Tomato Brunette, took the chair. That truce was also chess. The Angels used it to carve Ontario. National boss Walter Stadnick dangled patch for patch to Kingston, Niagara Falls, and Toronto, told London no. Some in Kingston and some in Toronto took it, calling the Bandidos logo silly. Paul Sasquatch Porter signed off, "I wish you the best with your new colors." Then became Hell's Ottawa president, flipped Andre Curly Sauvageau, and helped collapse Toronto RM. On the 29th of December, about 168 Ontario bikers rode into Montreal for a mass patchover. Satan's Choice, Paradise Riders, Los Lobos, and more dropped old colors for the Angels' death's head while Allo Police filmed. The Angels were in southern Ontario for real. Kane's last tips before dying pointed cops to the money spine. Rocker Jean-Richard Race La Rivière rented 7,415 Beaubien, didn't live there. Tuesdays and Thursdays, couriers fed cash into Unit 504. Robert Gauthier shifted it to Unit 403. Empty room, 2 computers, huge safe. The SQ planted a camera. Stéphane Chagnon came to count and enter amounts. Discs under the carpet held Nomad books. Insurance man Richard Jemmy ran the program. Boxes rolled out with roughly $500,000 each. The Nomad National Bank moved $24 to $36 million a month. In January 2001, it showed $36 million in deposits and around $13 million in receivables. The laundry stayed invisible. The Maytag of the North kept spinning. Commander André Bouchard. They had 5 money machines working 24 hours a day. It was like a joke. On the 24th of January 2001, Sandra Craig walked into Carcajou with spreadsheets. She and her late husband had supplied 1,700 kilos of cocaine to the Angels between 1998 and 2000. Code names matched the books. Stadnick was Gertrude, Carol was Renard. On the 30th of January, cops hit the flats and seized more than $5 million cash. Brunette took national president, Jean-Claude Bélanger took Quebec City, Robert Leger held Beauport until his death. The Angels pressed Brunette to switch. He told Detective Benoit Roberge, "They killed my friends. I'm not a prostitute." On the 13th of February 2001, a car opened up near Mirabel. 2 rounds hit his chest. He reversed and lived. "We just want to live in peace," he said after. Weeks later in Oshawa, Bandido Eric the Red McMillan got slashed from chest to belly and almost bled out. On the 15th of February 2001, police crashed a Hell's meeting at the Holiday Inn downtown. On the table, photos of every Bandido in Quebec with addresses and phones. The Nomads were armed. RCMP Sergeant Thomas O'Neill, "We struck a gold mine." To shield the bigger hit, the Crown cut quiet deals on gun charges. At 4 a.m. on the 28th of March, 2,000 officers rolled. By night, 128 Hells and associates were in cuffs in Montreal. 2 days later, Calgary raids added 51. Quebec alone had 138 arrests. Every rocker, every evil one, all present Nomads and several full-patch Angels fell. At Eric Buford's, photos showed Canadians goalie Jose Theodore partying at the South Shore Clubhouse. His number sat in Buford's phone. Restaurateur Salvatore Brunetti, who'd flipped on the dark circle, got grabbed with cash, a gun, and laundering proof. At his estate, Nomad Rene Charbois sobbed and begged to flip. Bouchard said, "F you, no deal for you." Only Gregory Woolley stayed stone. "We've got DNA," Bouchard said. To tie hands to triggers, his team hunted saliva on cups, food scraps, Kleenex, and dug old boxes for hairs and spit. 4 key DNA hits matched 4 Hells or rockers, including Woolley. 1 Angel ate cigarettes to dodge saliva. Another mocked cops, blew his nose, and Bouchard pocketed the Kleenex. David Wolf Carroll slipped to Mexico and vanished. Stadnick got grabbed in Jamaica and shipped back in April. In July 2001, accountant Luis Elias Likas for Irish boss Jerry Maddox flipped. He said the West End gang controlled the port, sold access, and moved at least 700 kilos to the Angels in 2 years for $22 million. A priest praised Maddox's charity. The Crown pointed to a fridge note listing Guy and Mom with cell numbers for Guy Lepage and Botcher. John McClane flipped too. Lecca's got 7 years, a new identity, and protection. Maddox pleaded guilty in 2002. Police said Foster ran a cocaine empire and ordered bombings that wrecked the Angels St. Nicola bunker and 6 other buildings. He pled to 28 counts and got 12 years on the 11th of May, 2001. By the 1st of December 2001, Rock Machine completed the patchover. Bandidos Canada, now flying 7 chapters: Montreal, Quebec City, Pointe Tremblay, Beauport, Toronto, Kingston, and Niagara Falls. The Scandinavians had sponsored them. Orders flowed from the American Mother chapter. Spring 2002 brought Botcher back to court. The Crown said the first trial was bent by fear. France Charbonneau led the case. Stéphane Godas-Gagné testified that Botcher wanted random murders of justice workers to scare the system into silence. Reports from the dead informant, Danny Kane, hit the jury. Money logs, hit lists, inside chatter. Kane had stolen the Nomads book showing $111,503,110 in profit in 8 months of 2000. On the 6th of May 2002, a jury found Botcher guilty on 2 counts of first-degree murder. He got life with no parole for 25 years. A Montreal detective said there was talk that U.S. Hell's bosses wanted Botcher gone. Take the f***er out because he caused all the trouble. The street had crowned him a folk hero once. Now the court put him away. Operation Springtime hit hard, but not clean. The Angels had 106 full-patch members in Quebec in 2001. By 2002, they had 124. The Trois-Rivières chapter stepped up after the Nomads fell. RCMP's Thomas O'Neill said, "We didn't finish them off, but we set them back years." Sharon Marsden wrote that the blow was heavy, not fatal. 70 full-patch Angels stayed free in Montreal. Sherbrooke, Saint-Basile-le-Grand, and Sorel chapters filled the vacuum. The machine did not fold. It rebalanced. Police were not done. Operation Amigo targeted the Bandidos, meaning the old rock machine that had patched over. On the 5th of June 2002, raids rolled up 63 members in Quebec and Ontario, including all Quebec Bandidos and many associates. The club admitted their Quebec chapters were frozen because members were in jail. After Amigo, only 15 Bandidos stayed active in Ontario. Giovanni Mustadere took national president. In July 2003, Alain Brunet faced reality and urged Muscadere to accept the Angels' terms. The deal read like surrender. The Bandidos leave Quebec forever and their jailed men retire from crime in exchange for their lives inside prison. Muscadere cursed them as cowards in public and claimed the club would focus on Western Canada. But the map said what mattered. Quebec was ceded. By the end of the war, the numbers were brutal. At least 162 dead, more than 300 wounded, over 100 arrested, 20 missing. Government costs in the millions, 84 bombings, 130 arsons. American journalist Julian Rubenstein wrote that the Quebec Biker War took more lives and terrorized more civilians than the New York Mafia wars of the 1970s and 1980s. From Augur's bullets to Botcher's life sentence, the war ran hot until the clamps closed and the Bandidos froze out of Quebec. The last word on the streets was simple. The Angels held the crown, the Bandidos backed out, and the city tried to catch its breath. In 2005, Salvatore Casetta walked out of prison and crossed to the Hells, later called the Quebec Boss from 2011 to 2015. In 2006, the Bandidos blew up their own house with the Shedden Massacre, and by the 1st of October 2007, their site said Canada was shut down, leaving the Angels riding alone. April 2008 brought a weak reboot, as ex-Bandidos in Winnipeg used the Rock Machine name and patch, mostly online. And that same year, politics got splashed when Foreign Minister Maxime Bernier resigned after leaving a NATO brief at his girlfriend's place, and her past links to Hell surfaced. 2009 turned hot with Operation Axe in February, Operation Balladour in March, then April's Operation Shark-CC, hitting 156 Hells across Quebec, New Brunswick, France, and the Dominican Republic, tied to 22 murders and 4 seized bunkers, including Sorel Tracy. On the 13th of March 2014, Star Detective Benoit Roberge pled guilty to breach of trust and gangsterism for taking $125,000 from the Hells and drew 8 years. In October 2015, a judge tossed the big 2009 cases for delay, while that same year the SQ said Botcher was still pulling strings from his cell through his daughter with Gregory Woolley as his street arm. And in November 2015, Botcher was arrested again for plotting to kill Reynald Desjardins. In 2016, expert Pierre de Champlain said the Angels had complete control, and a Montreal funeral drew 300 bikers and up to 3,000 onlookers. Cazetta's lane kept twisting with arrests, dropped charges in 2017 for delays, bail denied on other counts, and a $2 million suit in May 2018. In 2022, Maurice Mom Botcher died of throat cancer at 69 behind bars. The war slowed, the headlines cooled, and the crown stayed put. And the streets didn't heal. They adapted. Montreal learned how fast a patch can turn into a crown, and how fast that crown draws blood. From street attacks to bombings, from courtrooms to clubhouses, The city watched power change hands and neighbors pick sides. And just like that, the names fade, but the rules stay cold. Now the real question is, was the truce ever real, or just a pit stop on the road to more bodies? What could have stopped the war sooner? Tougher laws or cleaner hands inside the badge? Let us know what you think in the comments box below. And if you liked how we presented you this video, hit that like button and make sure to subscribe for more.